Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the history of color in photography. From the dawn of photography, there was a desire for things to be in color. The earliest photography of the 19th century was black and white or brown and white. And people, though they loved the photography, they were disappointed that they couldn't see things in color. So I want to show you some images and tell you some key names. History of color photography. Let's talk first a little color theory. White light is not a pure light. It is made up in equal amounts of red, green, and blue. Now, as you can see, in the center is white because it is an equal mixture of red and green and blue. Where red and green overlap, it's yellow. Where a red and blue overlap, it's magenta, it looks like pink. And where green and blue overlap, it's cyan, C-Y-A-N. It looks like aqua blue. So yellow in and of itself is not a pure color. I want to emphasize that there's a big difference between color theory and light theory. So this is additive light, where lights are being added together and stacked on top of each other. In this case, the white light is a projection of red and green and blue, and the person's shadow knocks out certain colors and leaves the rest. Now this is subtractive light, filters of yellow. The yellow filter stops blue. The magenta filter stops red, or stops green, and the cyan filter stops red. So where the red and magenta overlap, where the yellow and magenta overlap, red is the only common denominator between them, so red gets through. Where yellow and cyan overlap, green is the common denominator between the two, so it's the only color that gets through. Where magenta and cyan overlap, blue is the only common denominator, and it's the only that gets through. In the center, everything is stopped because all the other colors are stopped. I want to back up really fast to this. The center, we're generating white light. All three of these get together and make white. But here, we've subtracted everything, left only black behind in the center. Now, the first photographs were daguerreotypes that were hand-colored. When they hand-colored, they used not a paint, as some have suggested, they used an oil. And the reason for that is paint is opaque, and oil has had translucence. You can see through oil to a certain degree. So details of the fabric, details of the face could be seen. If you look closely, their faces have a little bit of red in the cheek to make them look alive. Here's two children side by side. They also a daguerreotype, hand-colored, to make their sweaters look blue, put some color in the face, a little red in the cheeks, probably hand-colored the eyes brown. And this character, here's a good example of the need for oil. Look at his shirt. You can see all the folds in the fabric. And if it were paint, it would just be basically a red shirt, just solid red. But to see through it, you must have an oil. This is hand-colored blue with a little color in her cheeks. And I gotta tell you, I've done some hand coloring when I was in college, and I gotta be honest with you, right off the bat, women are better at this than men, because women understand makeup. They know how to make some contour. Now here's the oils we used in college. There's a brand called Marshall oils. And they are oils that, and the cotton balls are the applicator system you would put on a print. This is another brand. And as you can see, some of these kits are quite large. Marshall oils, I will swear by, it's a wonderful kit, it's a wonderful set. In the upper right, you see an extra white, the tube of white. They also have tubes, which you can't read this, are extenders. For those of you who've ever mixed paint, you'll know that you have to mix at least as much as you need, because when you try mixing it again, you will not get a match. So you'd mix the color you want, you'd add extender, and you'd have a bit larger batch of the color you want. It doesn't take much of these tubes. You see the tubes are rather small. It doesn't take much to mix it up. You'll also notice under closer observation, sticks with points and cotton balls. So what you would do, having applied it, is you take a Q-tip and rub it down to create highlights. And then you take the Q-tip, put it in the cotton ball, twist it, and pick up a little bit and create a really sharp little Q-tip that you could go in and rub down the highlights, that highlight in an eye or on a bubble of water. I wish you could read these because they have, look at the far right bottom row. Second from right, it says lip. Some of these say things like flesh. Pretty direct, pretty straightforward concepts. And the bottles on the bottom, the Marlene solution, bottom left, is for cleaning up your mistakes. And the others are ways of creating extenders. Levi Hill is not a name I want you to worry about. He said he created a color print called a heliochrome. He was a Baptist minister in New York State. And this is his color photograph. And when asked how he did it, he was pretty evasive. And for a long time, he said, I'll tell you eventually. It's kind of a secret process. And at one point, people started calling him a fake. Some more of his prints. And ultimately, he wrote a book, which was largely, carrying on sort of a biography about himself. Obviously, biographies are. He just talked about his life, but he never got to the point of how the process works. And in the end, right to his deathbed, he said, it was an accident. I did it once and I've never been able to recreate it. And he insisted all the way to his deathbed that he did not fake it, but that it was an accident and that he was not able to reproduce it. Recently, scientists have suggested maybe he was telling the truth. James Clerk Maxwell is a name I do want you to know. So you can make a point of paying attention and circling this name on your notes. James Clerk Maxwell was very possibly one of the greatest minds of the second millennium. He's been called the Einstein of Scotland. He's been called the Isaac Newton of Scotland. When he went off to school, he was kind of poor, and his clothes weren't, very stylish. He also had an accent like he was from the country, like a local yokel. But he was brilliant beyond measure. This is James Clerk Maxwell as a young man. And he used additive light to create a photograph. And what he did is he photographed this bow ribbon. He photographed it he photographed it 3 times, all in black and white, once with a red filter, once with a green filter, once with a blue filter. Developed the film and then put the film into projectors so that he could project them and reconstitute that picture on the wall. And it worked. So he would project these in registration with each other. And this is the world before electric light bulbs. So it was like what you call a spirit lamp, a little oil lamp for a light source. It was incredibly impractical, but it was a color photograph. So you could take these 3 photographs and put them back together, project them back together. Here's part of his equipment. And here's the slides he projected on glass. Now, why am I showing the planet Saturn in regards to James Clerk Maxwell? At the time of his life, you could see with the best telescopes that there was a ring around Saturn. But people struggled and debated, what exactly is that ring? Is it solid? Is it elastic? What is that? James Clerk Maxwell determined mathematically that it must be particles. Nothing else would be stable enough to stay there. It has to be particles orbiting Saturn. In 1977, and the debate was never resolved until 1977, when Voyager passed right through the rings of Saturn and proved that they're particles. So, as I said, Maxwell was one of the greatest minds of his age, of our age even. John Joly John Jolly devised a screen line process of glass with ruled lines at 200 per inch, and they were in additive colors of red, green, and blue, placed against an orthochromatic plate, which means the film, which means that it was not sensitive to red. The exposure was made, the film was removed and developed and placed in registration with the original screen, and it made color photographs with little lines. It was an impractical process, but he made color photographs. And this is what his screen line looks like, 200 per inch. And that's a close-up of what his screen lines would have looked like as prints. Gabriel Lippmann. Now, you know what it's like when you're walking down the road after it's rained and you look at puddles of water and there's a little bit of gasoline or oil and you see these color rings? They look like little rainbows. Those are sometimes called Newton rings because Newton first described them. They're not actual color. They are it's called interference or the diffusion of light. Rings interference. No color pigments on oil water. He used panchromatic film and a mercury mirror to create interference film. Developed color image could be seen with glass wedges or prisms glued to the emulsion side of the image. He won a Nobel Prize. So this is Gabriel Lippmann, and that's his contraption. You see a mercury mirror on the back, a photographic plate with the emulsion on the inside facing the mercury. A color image is projected, and the color image is exposed on the photographic plate. And when you peel them apart, some of the mercury is left, and the mercury will, through interference, create an image in color. So these are done with Newton's rings. By the way, this is the only color photograph of Leo Tolstoy. And that's Gabriel Lippmann in his laboratory. Louis Ducos du Huron. In 1869, he theorized the use of a screen ruled with lines in red, green, and blue could act as a filter in making color pictures. So these are some of his photographs done in color, one of his contraptions, and that rooster of his, which shows up in so many of his pictures. Louis and Auguste Lumiere. Louis and Auguste Lumiere, now you can remember their names from the creators of the movies, of the first movies, but here they are. You've seen that picture before, the brothers. And what they did, they created a thing called an autochrome, where they would take potatoes and grind them up into individual little starch cells and stain them in green and violet blue and orange red and apply them to film. And then they would dust them with a black carbon powder to fill in the holes between them. And what would happen is when you made an exposure, these were little filters that would block certain colors or certain points of exposure, and you ended up with a beautiful little autochrome. One of the drawbacks is it was really difficult to do, and some of these cells would congregate into little blotches. This was like around 1900, and it was really popular until the 1930s when Kodak surpassed this. If you look closely, you see a little dottiness or like a grain. That's some of the blotchiness of the potato cells. But it was a very effective method. Red poppies. Claire L. Finlay created the Thames color plate. She devised a checkerboard of red, green, and blue, as opposed to the random planning of the autochrome. She was a major competitor to the next name we'll talk about, Louis Dufay. The process was very popular until the mid-1930s when subtractive materials became available. Subtractive materials meaning color negatives. These are all color positives. And ultimately, you can't reproduce them easily. But now on this close-up, you can see the color pattern of her matrix. Louis Dufay dioptichrome plate, or also known as Dufay color. It came in roll film, which was one of its big appeals. It was rather convenient. It was more popular than the autochrome, plus a preferred structure. Its screen was a mosaic of blue and green squares with the diagonal red lines. Here's a few examples. Don't want to cross her. Now this is a close-up of Louis Dufay's structure of his film. Cyan and blue with red lines crossing it. And this is a picture taken in London just after World War II, after the fall. Leopold Godowsky Jr. and Leopold Mannes were musicians. Godowsky is on the left, Mannes is on the right. And as teenagers, they played with chemistry in the garage to try and solve color. That's Leopold Mannes, and that's Godowsky. And they invented Kodachrome. Kodachrome was a transparency film which came about in the mid-1930s. And the way this film is done is when the film develops, there are multiple layers. Blue is on top. Underneath that's a yellow filter. Film is all sensitive to blue light, as I've mentioned a few times. So blue is on the top. Underneath that is a yellow filter, so blue light doesn't penetrate to the red and green layers. Red's last, by the way, green and red layers. And what happens is in each layer there are dyes, and there's also a thing called color couplers. So when the development comes, color couplers will, in different colors, will recognize where exposure happened, and they will couple and leave red, green, blue, or cyan, yellow, magenta. Kodachrome was really slow. It had an ISO of like 8 when it first came out. Initially, it was just for the movies. So this is like movie film. But then it was made available for 35 millimeter cameras. If you've ever seen National Geographic, it was all shot with the top box, Kodachrome 64, which was an excellent, excellent film. I could cry that it was discontinued. The problem with slide film was that you ended up with a tiny piece of film, you know, like a third the size of a credit card, which was your picture, nice and sharp, but it was inconvenient to look at. So this is Mannes and Godowsky in their laboratory. So Kodak came up with slides, slide mounts, and carousel projectors. So on the bottom, you see a slide, which is how the film looked, and you put it into a slide mount. And so here, and some of these mounts were paper mounts. You'd have to use a heat press to glue them together. Or sometimes they were plastic and snap together. It would also give you instructions to view this side, meaning this is the side to look at it from or put inside of the carousel projector. There's plastic mounts that snap together. And this is a carousel projector. And that's the carousel that goes on top. So you would load your slides in there. It would hold like 80 slides, and you can project it onto a screen. There's like a little handheld remote you can run. Not a remote, but a switch on a wire cable. And this is a competitor brand where the carousel feeds in the top and just turns. I've used those things many times. Okay. My concern is sometimes the slides get stuck in there, and that becomes an issue. Now, the names I want you to remember are James Clerk Maxwell, Louis and August Lumiere, Gabriel Littman and his Newton rings, Leopold Godowsky and Leopold Mannes and Kodachrome. So thank you for watching this. I hope it was informative. Remember when your parents had carousel projectors? You don't have to deal with that anymore because the world went digital and now we have color printers. Color printers are not as good as color film. And the reason is color printers have little color dots side by side they're punching out. And they don't, sometimes color prints look hyper sharp, almost disturbingly so. Whereas in color, when I was teaching color at Mount SAC, we actually had color enlargers and the students took color pictures. We would develop their film, they would make prints. And once I would print with my students, basically, so I didn't disappear into an office, but I just brought my vacation pictures and I was printing them. And they said, my gosh, these are Edwards' pictures. They look so good. And then I brought them home. My wife was looking at these pictures from the vacation we were on. She looks at, what kind of paper is this? She flips it over, expecting to see Fuji or, you know, HP or something. I said, no, that's real photographic print paper. Really? Yes. The advantage of color photographic print paper is that it has translucent layers. You can see through a layer to a layer. And so it has depth to it. I can't say, you know, I'm not going to do a never say, I'm going to do a never say never. And color digital printers have become incredibly good, but they don't really match the color print yet. But they've gone, you know, I'll be honest with you, digitally, I did a Rip Van Winkle when they first came out. I'm not going to bother with that. And then I woke up a couple years later and they were like, digital cameras were incredibly good. Like, when did that happen? Well, that's a brief history of color photography. And digital's all color now, as you probably may have noticed on your phones and with your cameras you use. Talk to you soon.